Again, we have a story from the nosleep thread in Reddit. The title of this story is The Woman in the Trees. Let's start. It was either joining a gym or taking up hiking. I wish I had joined a gym. After my breakup with Carl, and after a much-needed period of shameless self-pity and wallowing, I knew that I needed to do something positive, get active again, and feel good about myself. I decided on hiking for a couple of reasons. I had never been an outdoorsy type, and I wanted to prove to myself that I could challenge myself. I had gotten so comfortable, too comfortable, I suppose, in my relationship. It was time to get out of my comfort zone. Plus, I liked the idea of the solitude hiking would bring me. I needed time to think and reflect. Well, let's just say I didn't get that part right. But I definitely found myself out of my comfort zone, way out of my comfort zone. After spending far too much on a pair of hiking boots, a day pack, and some other hiking gear, none of which would come in useful, as you'll see, I chose a trail about a 45-minute drive away from where I lived. I arrived early at the trailhead. The air was crisp and fresh, renewing even. I went inside a small ranger station to sign in. Greeting me were two men, an older one with bushy gray eyebrows and gray hair in a ponytail, and a younger one, probably closer to my own early 30s age with dark, slicked back hair. "Good morning," said Ponytail cheerily. "Lovely morning for a hike." I'd have to take his word for it, since this was my very first time hiking, but I smiled back cheerfully as he handed me a pen to sign the visitor's register. Ponytail explained a couple of rules to me. Stay on the designated path, leave and take nothing, and then he said something that made me pause. Now, we have been having a bit of a problem with a vagrant in the park. A woman. She's been hassling a few of the hikers. He was cut off from the sound of a phone ringing in a room to the back of the reception area. He held up a finger to signal he'd be right back. The entire time, Slick had been sitting behind the counter on stool, watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. He hadn't said a word until Ponytail left. "Listen here," he said quietly. "That's no woman in the park. He knows it," he said, pointing at Ponytail on the call in the other room. "And I know it. What I am about to say might make you turn around and head straight for your car. But if it doesn't, and you still want to do the trail, then you've got to be careful." He kept his voice low, seemingly to keep Ponytail from overhearing him. "If you see her, or it, or whatever, it will be in a tree. She is always in the trees. She will try talking to you. Do not engage. Try to not even look up if you hear a voice coming from the trees. But if you can't help it, whatever you do, don't talk back to it. Just pretend it's not there and walk back to the trailhead and get in your car and drive away. If you see her a second time, then run. If she starts climbing down from the trees, then pray." I stared at Slick in shock, my mouth slightly open, not sure if I should start laughing or screaming. "I'm only telling you this," he continued, "because, no offense, I can see you're probably not the most experienced hiker." He looked me up and down, clocking my obvious never-used boots and Pac's waist belt harnessed too tightly around my middle, and she seems to target people like you. The thing is, It looks like she's not just observing anymore, but it stopped abruptly as Ponytail came back into the room. Sleek stared at me, his expression serious. "Right," said Ponytail. "Sorry about that. Now, you have enough water? The round trip takes about 4 hours to complete, maybe 5 if you're not walking too fast or not used to the trail." I nodded, my head still spinning. Now, of course, this is the part I should have turned around and headed straight for my car. But the problem is, I'm terribly stubborn. With Ponytail's implied and Sleek's outright judgment of my experience as a hiker, I was very determined to prove them wrong. In fact, 10 minutes into the hike, I had convinced myself that Sleek was just trying to scare me off because he probably thought my inexperience would become a problem for him, like I'd be dumb enough to go off trail or try pet a mountain lion. 30 minutes in, I noticed my boots began to hurt my feet a little. Ooh, that sucks. An hour in, the air turned from crisp and refreshing to thick and oppressive, and the big toe of my left foot was absolutely throbbing. I didn't know how much determination I had left to keep me going forward. I found a bench a couple of minutes later and sat down. I immediately took off my boot and sock and examined the large raw blister forming on my toe. Ouch. I hadn't brought a first aid kit and was cursing myself as I took a large gulp of water from my bottle. All of a sudden, I can't describe this any other way. I felt the presence of another person and instinctively looked at the trail, sure to see another hiker making their way around the bend. But there was no one. I held my breath, waiting. The forest was unnaturally still and quiet, as if it were holding its breath and waiting with me. And then I jumped violently as a group of blackbirds exploded out of a tree a ways down from where I had just come from, cawing angrily as they flew away. Maybe it was the pain or the discomfort from the heat, or maybe I had started feeling spooked by what Sleek had said, but I decided to get out of there, pulling my sock and boot on and packing away my water bottle in record speed. It would take me another hour to get back to my car, maybe a little longer as I had started limping a bit to keep the weight off my left foot. I still had a knowing feeling that I wasn't alone, that any minute another hiker would appear on the path. Instead, I heard a soft "hello" from above. I did look. Of course I did. Anyone would. What I saw was an extremely thin, pale woman sitting on a low branch in the tree above me. Her arms were hugging the trunk, and it took me a moment to realize they must have been impossibly long because they wrapped around the thick trunk almost entirely. My hands wouldn't have even met each other if I were to do it. Her fingers were long and splayed against the bark, ending in long, dirty nails. Her face will be burned into my memory forever. Her skin was so pale, almost completely white, and her eyes were a light milky blue, too big and too wide apart. She had long, stringy, blonde, almost white hair. She was completely naked. "Are you in pain?" she asked in a cracked, wispy voice, and then she started smiling. I expected to see fangs in her mouth. Instead, she had the tiniest teeth, spaced apart in swollen pink gums. But they were sharp and pointy, like a crocodile. As her smile got wider and wider at my shock, I felt adrenaline fill my body. Slick's words echoed through my mind. Head back to the trailhead and get to my car. My heart pounding, my neck slick with sweat, I started walking briskly, unsure if turning my back towards her was a terrible idea. I felt her eyes on me. I walk-jogged, gritting my teeth through the pain for what could have been 5 minutes or 50. Please, God, I thought, don't let me see her again. My mind tried to reconcile with what it had just witnessed, but I pushed the thought out of my head. Worrying about that put all my senses, and I sure needed all my wits about me to make it back to my car. It was impossible, but somehow she made it to a tree ahead of me. I stopped and felt my heart drop as a pale leg appeared from the thick canopy of a tree just 20 feet ahead. And then another leg appeared. She was climbing down. I started running, ducking as I flew past the tree she was coming down from. A long arm swooped down as I passed, but I managed to dodge her grabbing claws. I looked back and saw that she was at the bottom of the tree on all fours. Her proportions were human, but so wrong. She began to scuttle towards me like a crab with short, fast steps. She was covering ground at an alarming rate, and I knew there was no way I could outrun her. I made it to a clearing that I remembered was close to the parking lot. If I could just last 5 more minutes, I could maybe get to safety. And then I tripped. Pain searing through my already bloody and blistered toes as they collided with a rock. I landed on my hands with a thud and waited for the inevitable. I was so sure it was about to happen that I could almost feel her collide with me. But nothing. Still on my hands and knees, I shakily turned my head. She was still there, on all fours, but stopped. She let out an animal-like shriek, but didn't come any closer. It took me a while to register. She wouldn't come into the clearing. She was staying in the shade of the trees, prowling, looking for a way to get to me. The sunlight seemed to be what had saved me. A million thoughts played out in my mind. I could stay in the clearing until someone else came along. But what if they couldn't help me? What if no one came at all? It wouldn't eventually get dark. I knew that after the clearing, for about 300 yards, the path was shaded by trees again before the trailhead. Could I make it if I sprinted? With stomach churning dread, I knew I would have to try. I kept my eyes on her and started backing up, slowing. She stayed at the shade's edge, watching me, evaluating what I was doing. 200 feet until the path became shaded again. 100. 50. 10. And then I turned around and started sprinting. The trail crested and I could see the parking lot. I didn't feel relieved. I wasn't safe yet, but I could see safety, and so I allowed myself to hope. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a flash of white. I turned and saw her bounding towards me through the trees. She had come around and was looping towards me. At the speed she was going, I was sure she'd get to me before I made it off the path. Somehow, I managed to push myself, and I heard her shriek again, a sound of pure animalistic frustration and hunger, as I made it back into the sunlight of the parking lot. I flew past the ranger station and fumbled with my keys. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped them. I managed to unlock my car and get in, locking it again. I started the engine and put it into reverse, swinging out of my parking bay without even looking. Slick came running out of the station, a look of shock and suspicion on his face. I rolled down my window a fraction and yelled at him to go back inside and lock the doors. He hesitated for only a second and then hurried back inside, closing the door behind him. I didn't stop trembling for the entire 45 minutes it took me to get home. I don't know what she was. I don't know what she wanted, or what she was going to do to me if she had caught me. What I do know, though, is that after that one and only hike, I have never felt safe again, and I have never shaken off the feeling of being watched. I keep my lights on at home all the time. I avoid the shade. My shadow now, a thing of safety and comfort. And here, the story end. What do you think about it?